President Biden is defending his decision to pull the U.S. military out of Afghanistan. He addressed the nation from the White House yesterday in a speech that marked an end to America's longest war, following 20 years of fighting and bloodshed.
Last night in Kabul, when I was running for president, I made a commitment to the American people that I would end this war. And today, I've honored that commitment. I believe this is the right decision, a wise decision, and the best decision for America.
The president pushed back on criticism that the U.S. withdrawal was anything but a success. Republican critics, meanwhile, blame him for mishandling the evacuation mission and insist the move has only weakened American security. The Cost of War Project at Brown University estimates the U.S. spent nearly $6 trillion waging war in Afghanistan, Iraq, Pakistan, and Syria since 2001. More than 2,400 U.S. service members were killed in Afghanistan alone, while nearly 111,000 Afghan military, police, and civilians lost their lives over the past 2 decades. So for more on this, let's bring in CBS News senior White House correspondent Weijia Jiang. Thanks for joining us, Weijia. Fewer than 200 Americans remain in Afghanistan now. Not all of them want to leave, but some of them do. The Wall Street Journal reports that among them is the Afghan interpreter who rescued President Biden and 2 other senators during a snowstorm in Afghanistan in 2008. He's now hiding from the Taliban and making a plea to the U.S. government not to be forgotten. Has the White House responded to this? And how is the State Department moving along in the process of getting those who wish to leave out of the country safely?
So first, Anne-Marie, just quickly, there are a lot of numbers floating out there. I just want to clarify that CBS News has confirmed there are about 300 Americans who remain in Afghanistan. And, you know, I think about 100 to 200 of them are still trying to evacuate. The rest are not yet. And the administration has said for all of those Americans, whether they are trying to leave now or whether they decide that they want to later, they have committed to helping them do that, which is controversial if you ask Republicans, because just 2 weeks ago, President Biden said if there were any Americans remaining there who were still trying to leave past the August 31st deadline, he said U.S. troops would remain until they got out. Of course, things on the ground changed. That's precisely why the administration said that could no longer happen. But they, again, are committed to working to get them home as soon as possible. As for your other question, the press secretary was directly asked about this particular interpreter who helped then Senator Biden back in 2008, who was stranded. This interpreter hopped into a Humvee and went to retrieve him along with 2 other lawmakers. And so now he is making this desperate plea to President Biden, saying, please don't abandon me since I did not abandon you so many years ago. And Psaki spoke in more general terms, saying that you know, she was very grateful and the U.S. is grateful for his service and all the help that he provided, and that they are committed to not only helping those Americans we talked about leave, but also Afghan allies. So the problem here, though, as we've been talking about for a couple weeks now, is that we really don't know the success of those Afghan allies and whether they're actually going to be able to leave. Because right now there are no more military charters to get them out physically. And also the question of whether the Taliban is going to honor their commitments and allow safe passage is one that's still open-ended, because we have to wait to see, which is exactly what the White House said, too, that they're not going to trust the Taliban's words, which are that, yes, of course, we're going to adhere to what we said, but they have to watch their actions. And the actions that we've seen so far do not indicate that they're going to be so willing to open those doors and let anyone who wants to leave, because they are in control now. And so, again, it is a waiting game, and it is exactly why the president continues to receive criticism for abandoning those people. Those are the words of many critics against the president.
Weijia, so let me ask you about something else that's actually happening today at the White House. The president is set to welcome Ukraine's president. That's going to happen today. It was delayed over the last couple of days, of course, because of what was going on in Afghanistan. Americans became familiar with Volodymyr Zelensky during President Trump's impeachment trial. What are the significant issues President Zelensky is hoping to discuss with President Biden? Clearly, he found himself embroiled in former President Trump's impeachment scandal. I'm curious to know what kind of a relationship he has with President Biden.
So this is their first face-to-face meeting, certainly since President Biden took over the Oval Office. And to your point, Vlad, it's when Anne Marie and I were talking about this morning that this really is a full circle moment. People might remember that you're right. Zelensky was at the center of the former president's first impeachment investigation because of that now infamous phone call between those two leaders in which the president offered a quid pro quo in exchange for launching investigations into the Biden family and Burisma, which is a company that the President Biden's son, Hunter, was on the board of. If you can follow all of that. So the reason why it is a photo opportunity that will tell a lot of stories in one image is because of that. As for the goal of this particular meeting, who knows what they'll talk about behind closed doors, but certainly publicly, they will focus on Ukraine's sovereignty and Russian aggression, because we have seen in several months now, Russia continue to ramp up that aggression on the border after they, of course, annexed Crimea. And senior administration officials say that today they will recommit to supporting Ukraine and its sovereignty. We also expect they will talk about NATO contributions and the Nord Stream pipeline because that is a potential threat not only to Ukraine but to other countries in Europe once it is completed. So the question is whether President Zelensky is going to call on President Biden to do something to try to stop that project from being done. But certainly this is a very interesting, politically at least, meeting for these two leaders, and to just see them sitting next to each other will speak volumes.
Weijia, I just want to ask you about some domestic stuff. The aftermath of Ida. The White House says that it is more than 300 medical workers on the ground in Gulf states hit hard by both the Delta variant and Ida. We've certainly talked to doctors who say that their hospitals are running on generator power right now. What kind of critical aid are they providing?
So we know that the administration is working with those states with what they are calling surge response teams, which were already in place to enter really hard-hit areas by the COVID-19 pandemic. And so now you're right, they are dealing with these twin medical emergencies because of the strain on the healthcare system. And we did hear from the White House COVID response coordinator, Jeff Zients, yesterday. He said that we are providing critical care, conducting patient movement to relieve strained hospitals, and continuing to administer COVID-19 treatments for patients. So those teams have been sent down there to try to help as these states deal with not only rebuilding, but also with all the people who were already in need of medical attention and now just piling on that need because of Ida.
All right. Weijia Jiang for us at the White House. As always, Weijia, we appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure.